the focus on ridicule.
I'm white, and I've got everything I need. No one clutches their purses when they're in a room alone with me. And I can drive for any neighborhood I please at any hour, and the police don't do a thing. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I got everything I need. I'm a guy getting paid more than a girl with a degree. And I can walk down the streets after dark, no one wants to rape me. And I can get a girl pregnant and just as easily flee. Just like my straight white male dad did to me. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. I've got a pile of broken mirrors and I'm walking under ladders and I'm spilling tons of salt, but to me that doesn't matter, cause my skin and my gender and my orientation are the best things to have if you live in this nation. I recommend it highly. If I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. Shit's gonna work out for me, cause I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Intellectual Dollar Tree. We do the show live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific right here on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. And I don't know, give us some money, patreon.com/Echoplex, or hit up our website, echoplexmedia.com. Click the support tab. I'm producer Dave. You can find me on Grindr.
And I am HK Perrin. You can find me on Mastodon at hperrin at port87.social.
Fantastic. Well, it's been a while since we've done a fucking Steven Pinker video, my friend.
Oh.
I think there's a good reason for that.
Yes.
Because we fucking hate doing Steven Pinker videos. But he's on something called the Daily Stoic podcast, and he's really scraping the bottom of the barrel because we have more Twitter or Twitch followers than they have YouTube followers. So like Steven Pinker is like not really aiming high anymore. Maybe he's laying low. Maybe it's because he blocked everybody. This motherfucker has blocked more people than Madison Starmoon.
In all fairness, he could just be like, you know, trying to be kind to a new or up and coming content creator.
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe he's like, oh, Stoicism. That's something I'm supposed to be interested in. If you go to a fucking dinner party and you're like, hey, you know, you meet somebody, maybe they seem a little interesting. You're like, oh, you know, what are you into? Like, what's going on with you? And then they go, you know, I'm really into Stoicism. Fucking run away. Because you're not too far away from a conversation about like fucking skull sizes and shit. I mean, like.
It doesn't have to be a dinner party. If anyone ever says that to you, probably go away.
Right. If you learn that that's how they view the world after having been their friend for a couple of weeks, it may be time to sit them down and be like, listen, dude. Listen, dude, you're not actually more stoic than other people. You just think that it's a good idea. You're never going to meet a gay dude who is a stoic. Like you won't meet any people of color who are stoics. It's just all going to be very unremarkable white guys. Speaking of unremarkable white guys, here is Steven Pinker's interview with the Daily Stoic.
Communicate is contained in the longer article. And, you know, not always a book, but a long enough article that it isn't.
Wait, what?
I suspect that any movement that kills its critics or fires or shuts them up, that's probably a sign that this is a decadent intellectual movement that's not going to lead to something good.
Was that the best part of the interview? Fuck. I bet his podcast isn't even every day.
Guardian profile of you.
I could have,
Welcome to the Daily Stoicism podcast. We podcast weekly.
I was not. It was not a.
The rest of the time we spend being stoic.
Of my time.
Why not?
Well, he presented a lot of things totally chopped out of context. He I thought snooped around my apartment, my office, around my private memorabilia, and then kind of presented it as if I
Did you take anything from the girls at Epstein Island? Don't lie.
kind of narcissist for displaying it. I didn't. It was kind of none of his business in the first place. And they were kind of snooped around for any dirt that he could find.
Why is his backdrop like? You can see in his hair there's like a little bit of a green glow.
Yeah, you can tell he's on a green screen.
Steven Pinker, he's in front of a green screen. Why did he choose that as his backdrop? It's like a suburb leading into like a bigger city, like an overview, mostly sky.
You mean he's not just sitting on a chair on top of a hill?
He like dragged an office chair up a hike and a little MacBook.
He spoke to him at length, and none of that made it into the interview. So it was in general an adversarial profile. I knew that was possible because 25 years ago I had read Janet Malcolm's famous essay on how journalists like to cozy up to their subjects and pretend to be friends, but then often write highly.
Wait, he has a fundamental misunderstanding of what like a journalist does. Isn't a journalist's job to like write an article or maybe even a whole book about a subject matter? And just because they're being cordial to you, like while they talk to you, doesn't mean they're not going to burn you down in their article.
Correct.
Like the journalist's job isn't to be your friend.
Yeah, that is journalism 101.
It's probably like be polite to your subject. Like if you're interviewing somebody about something, it's probably like, oh, you should generally be polite. You'll get more out of them if you're polite to them. But like, what the fuck? Does he think that everybody who's polite, oh, these people all think that, right? They all think that if someone's polite to them, like during an interview or whatever, that's their friend. It's like a big IDW thing where they think that because somebody was cordial to them that like in person or whatever, that this person would never ever say anything negative about them in the larger public conversation.
Yeah. These are probably also people who think that the waitress is hitting on them.
Right. We'll go with food server here. We'll be otherwise the woke police are going to come after us. But yeah, specifically.
Well, I doubt they would, maybe some of them, but I doubt most of them would think that the waiter is hitting on them.
Well, the food server that happens to appear to be a man. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a friend who would always hit on the food server, and I'd be like, what are you doing? You're putting them in a very awkward position because it's their job to be nice to you.
Yeah. Don't hit on your wait staff.
Or anybody when they're at work, especially if you're at work with them.
I was prepared. I mean, a lot of people like you. I don't know if you were being sarcastic or not, but a lot of people said, "Oh, great profile! You came off so well." And perhaps that is the impression I'm being overly sensitive.
No.
Yes, you were overly sensitive, sir.
Largely positive, but isn't it interesting when you are the subject of how the news is made? And then I think there's something, was the Gale amnesia effect. You see how the news is made when it pertains to you or something you're an expert about. And then you go back to consuming the news as if it wasn't made with a similarly misleading or fundamentally flawed process, right? Like speaking of rationality, if our understanding of the world is dependent on the news beat.
This guy's a shitty interviewer. They just kind of popped in with some drama about some journalist Steven Pinker's mad at. He didn't even introduce him, ask him about his book. Like he didn't even be like, hey, what's your name?
Yeah. I have a different theory too. I do think he's right. You see how the news is made when it's about you, but you also see how you're not the hero in everyone else's story.
Right. Like if somebody wrote like a piece, about our show and it was like, and I interviewed with them and they were like pretty cool to me and whatever, and their piece was highly critical of our show, I might actually read their piece and see what they had to say and be like, oh, well, maybe I do a little too much of that. Or, oh, you're never going to get me to stop drinking on the air. Or yes, sometimes they smoke cigarettes on stream. Yeah. All these things are true. Okay. Yeah. I'm mean. Whatever. Yeah. We focus too much on people's character. Sure. Oh, we've entered the conversation in bad faith. Well, that comes pre-advertised, right? But I'd like kind of
that's literally our slogan.
I'd like maybe take a
it's on my shirt.
Oh, you're wearing the pink HK shirt. I'd take a moment, like, but if there was other like less kind of funny criticisms or whatever, I'd take a minute to like think about them and be like, well, is this, could we do a little bit better job in a couple places here because this or that criticism is being leveled at us. And then I'd hit you up and be like, well, funny enough, HK, they really like me. They're super nice to me. All these criticisms must be about you. Like this idea that first of all, just he called it a hit piece. They didn't even really do a good job of saying what the article was either. We probably talked over it. That might be another criticism, is that we talk over the important parts and don't leave the captions on. Who knows?
And then you just, experienced how the news media works. It does shake your understanding of the world a little bit.
Yeah, it does, and there is a kind of insight that you get from being a subject of a media profile. And I remember the first time I was in a documentary many years ago. It gave me a new appreciation for how films are made. Just seeing it through different eyes, knowing how the process works, and it was a good experience because even dramas and fiction. Why
did the guy pick a marble countertop for his background of his fucking video conference?
You're right. It is a marble countertop.
Maybe he just got new counters and he's really proud.
This is just weird backdrops all over the place. I mean, this guy's got books. The interviewer, he's just got books, and that's normal.
A fairly standard fare for a pseudo intellectual. Yeah,
like 1 out of 3 backdrops is normal.
How the cuts must be selected from a much larger recording process, what choices a director makes, gives you a new set of eyes with which to view the whole medium.
Yeah, that's one interesting argument I've heard for why public trust in the media is at an all-time low.
Is it because they write nasty articles about Steven Pinker? I don't think so. I think most people don't like Steven Pinker.
Effectively, we are all content creators of some kind. Everyone sort of understands how these algorithms work to a certain degree, or understands the incentives that are operating under content creators because we've experienced it in our own Facebook feeds or Twitter feeds. We the illusion of the sacredness of the media or its sort of flawless methodologies has fallen away, and that's partly why we don't trust.
Wait, is that what people thought before, that the media was flawless and sacred?
No one has ever thought that. The media has never even claimed that. I don't think any media network ever has claimed that.
Maybe
with
Fox.
Maybe the exception of Fox News had their slogan of fair and balanced.
InfoWars definitely claims that.
All right, you're probably right.
they make a version of that claim for sure.
As much.
Yeah, that could be. Although I suspect the bigger factor is the polarization that everyone hates the media that they think are giving unfair coverage to the people they hate.
Yeah, you have an interesting study in this book where you show
what book?
Gun control.
You just showed us that. That wasn't very stoic of you.
Yeah, he holds up the book for like one frame, and around it are 2 frames that are super blurry.
What book do you think that was?
I have no idea. Was it Steven Pinker's book? I don't know.
And then sort of the presuppositions you bring to it determines how you read that data.
I don't talk much to the chat, but a couple times co-host of this channel, historian Matt's in the chat, is like, I'm into his Stoic philosophy. Boo Dave, boo Dave. I just found this out about you, Matt. You're fine. I've known you for fucking like 4 or 5 years now, and I just found out that you're interested in Stoic philosophy. You're fine. You're not like if your name would, if you'd been like, oh, I'm going to choose Stoic Matt when you first joined my Discord, I'd been like, I don't know about this.
Yeah, we were specifically talking about the people who will tell you that within the first few minutes of meeting them.
It's an example of the my side bias, which is one of the most pervasive of all of the cognitive biases. It affects people regardless of their intelligence. It affects people on both sides of the political spectrum. But yes, in the clearest illustrations are that if you present a policy proposal and you say it comes from a Democrat, then the Democrats think it's a great idea, the Republicans think it's stupid, and vice versa. Or if you present the results from
I don't think that's true.
It depends what the policy is.
I think if you present the like, I think it's true to a certain extent. I think if you present a policy and you say, it's from your side, people will lean more towards accepting it, and vice versa if you say it's from the other side. But I don't think you can take a shit policy and make someone like it because you say it's your side's policy.
I mean, again, this is all like kind of subjective too, right? Like when you mean shit policy, but like, yeah, something with a bunch of holes in it that doesn't make any sense, that's needlessly vague or verbose. Like, I think a lot of people are going to be like, I don't even know what the fuck I just read. I don't care who wrote it. It's like a fucking Eric Weinstein book, maybe, if he ever wrote a book.
Like Obamacare, right, is a perfect example of this. I am not a fan of Obamacare. Like, I will say it is better than what existed before, but not by much, and it's not good. It is so far from good. It was a step in the right direction, but to get to the good side in that direction you're going to have to take thousands more steps.
So, like, I think what's missing from Pinker's, I guess we'll call it an analysis here, is that if he would have said people who operate in a purely partisan way or nearly purely partisan way when they evaluate politics, this might be closer to true. But if you're left of center or right of center and you're not really necessarily partisan, but you're ideological, this might be less true.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that, you're left of center, but you're not a rah-rah Democratic partisan.
I am very far left of center. I am much further than...
That's neither here nor there. You could be center left and still not be like hyper partisan, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, what's missing from his analysis is like how partisan is this person? Not just are they team blue or team red when they vote,
Yeah.
Tests some policy intervention favored by the left or right. Each side will think that the data support the position that they believed all along, even with the same data, and sometimes even more so if they are highly numerate. It does not protect them from interpreting data in the way that they prefer a priori.
Yeah.
Now that part I will agree with him on, and I think that's exacerbated by partisan media. Because non-partisan media, in as much as that can exist, will try and look like it's the goal to look objectively at data and draw a conclusion. But he's totally right in that, like, partisan media will look at the exact same data and draw completely different conclusions.
And not for nothing, they just got done talking about a piece of media that wasn't like a glowing review of Steven Pinker, and they were talking about how bad it was. That just happened.
Yep.
That wasn't like it's some interview 5 years ago. That was in like this interview less than 5 minutes ago.
I don't want to spend too much time on the media, but it did strike me that if rationality is always hard, and I think it always has been hard, it's got to be more difficult in a time where and you quote Steve Bannon, flooding the zone with shit. It's got to be harder to be rational when the zone is flooded with shit, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, sort of whoever you are, whatever you're trying to study. It having to wade through misinformation and disinformation and just plainly lots of information, it makes a sort of a timeless struggle more difficult, I suspect.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think it's exacerbated by the huge amount of editorializing supporting your own point of view.
Right.
That you can get that the dubious form of pleasure or satisfaction from seeing the umpteenth article that attacks your enemies or ratifies the justness of your side. And we have not all of it is fake news, but a lot of it is all too much fun to read and I think can reinforce people in their prejudices.
Yeah, and maybe the solution to the problem is just everyone should consume a lot less contemporaneous information. I mean, there's something about, a 300 or 400 page book, or
that was a Steven Pinker book. I could tell.
Your books are much
looked woke though.
Than that,
the rainbow on it,
the blank slate, and better.
That time he held it up for just long enough that the blur wore off.
Rationality when you're
in the center frame,
long form, sort of analog argument, as opposed to reading a thing that's been reduced down to 240 characters or 1,000 words that you're reading on your phone as you're being besieged by ads or, there's a rabbit hole you could go down at any time. I think we need sort of quiet, dedicated space to explore big ideas.
What they mean is that we all need to be rich enough to have a wooden library in our home. Like a study, right? We need to have a study. There needs to be like a pipe, like a tobacco pipe, though, not a weed pipe, a tobacco pipe that you light with a match on your desk next to your reading glasses that actually they're not even corrective. You just put them on because that's what you put on when you're reading. We need to go back to like an old timey smart person version of like consuming information. Maybe read the classics. Like, when he says that we shouldn't be reading so much contemporaneous information, the news, the first, you take off the word S on news and it says new. So that's what the news is. It's the news. It's what's new, baby.
I think giving him the benefit of the doubt, he might be criticizing the 24-hour news cycle. Maybe. Where they're like just trying to make stories, so they're just like analyzing everything and go back to the kind of how it used to be where the news ran for 1 hour on like 3 different stations.
It's like if we have these cognitive biases, we need room to sort of override them, so to speak, and perhaps the sort of technology and the medium with which most people get their information is not conducive to that. Epictetus said that philosophy wasn't this dry, abstract thing. It was a thing exploring with. That's how I think.
Nope.
Gosh, what is this? Is this an ad? Okay.
There is so much information available, so much bad information, but so much good information, even for a discerning consumer of editorials, of reporting, of explanatory articles in the sciences. I sometimes find myself despairing at the lack of time to read all the things that clearly are high quality and interest me. So it's a kind of a perverse byproduct of one beneficial aspect.
Just keep blocking people on Twitter, dude. You'll eventually just be following 7 people.
There's so much interesting stuff around. And so the shorter articles and the ones now with the actual reading time posted at the top of the article address the problem. There are only so many hours in the day, and there's some optimal trade-off between breadth and depth. But you're right. There's some.
How good of a reader do you have to be to match those times, though?
And like, I think they just do that so that if you've got 10 minutes before dinner, you find an article that takes less than 10 minutes to like. I don't.
I'm not a great reader, so if an article says 10 minutes at the top, it usually takes me about 15 minutes to read it.
I mean, if I'm reading something that's like about a thing I care about or a thing that I'm trying to learn about, the thing about a good article is that it's like sourced well. And so you end up reading other stuff too, right? You end up like, oh, you're like, oh, well, this is where this piece of information came from. Let me go check that out and see what that is. And so if you're actually reading something, it could be 1,000 words, but if there's 10 links in it that are explaining like why this person is taking the position they are, then you are actually probably should be reading like 11 articles, including the one you're reading right now. And all those articles are sourced. And so the first place you find a piece of information or somebody's point of view on something, I hope people aren't stopping there.
Yeah, Wikipedia will do that to me. I'll have a Wikipedia article open, and by the time I finish it, I've now got, 9 more Wikipedia tabs after this one open.
Yeah, like my last article, and I'm not going to get into what it was, but it was pretty well sourced. It was probably, 1,200 words, but it was pretty well sourced. And it would probably take you a couple hours to dig into everything that was in my article. It just wasn't all my words. Like the content of my articles include videos, links to a lot of times local news when I'm trying to find like the real deal on what happened, if it happened in a particular locality, et cetera, et cetera. So like just the fact that the article is short doesn't mean that it's bereft of information. It might have a wealth of information in it. You just got to click some shit to go find the deeper dive that somebody did into one aspect of the thing someone's writing about. Like otherwise, if you have to like literally fucking explain everything in your article, then you're just gonna end up fucking plagiarizing other people, essentially. Like that's why links are great.
Pursued at book length. I obviously believe that. Otherwise, I wouldn't write these books.
No, they're not fun. They're not fun to do.
They're not fun to do. I hope they're fun to read.
Yes.
And certainly what I have avoided.
The Blank Slate is one of the worst books I've ever read.
It's got more followers than I thought would be possible, but I avoid the style of Twitter commentary of just issuing a snarky pronouncement on all of the events and other articles that cross your screen. I use it as I virtually always will link to some article that expresses the argument in adequate depth and length. So I consider my tweets to be like the taglines published under the headline of a magazine article. This is what this is about. This is why you might be interested in reading it. But the substance of what I'm trying to communicate is contained in the longer article. And not always a book, but a long enough article that it isn't the 240 characters.
But I feel like even some of the instances where some of the things you've said have been controversial, but then, anyone that publishes on the internet and says like, here's all the evidence for what I believe. You sort of get people go, I've seen enough. I saw the headline. I have my opinion formed already. And I'm like,
but that might be the case. If like somebody busts out an article, if I like all of a sudden tomorrow, somebody puts out an article about ethics in game journalism. I'm like, I already know what this is. I've fucking seen this. like how many, you know what I'm saying? It's like the fucking, when the chemtrails people are like, oh, do your own research, watch this video, do this, watch this. It's like, how much of this shit do I have to consume before you think it's okay, before I can just make a snap judgment about like a point of view that I've been exposed to over and over and over again?
Yeah. In the case that it's brand new, sure, that could be an issue of like judging it based on the headline. But yeah, I see your point where like you just kind of get tired of reading the same old article over and over again.
Right. Like, I don't want to read another article about the heritability of fucking intelligence. I just don't want to read it. I don't care which side of this fucking shit you're on. If you're on one side, you're just debunking racists, and if you're on the other side, you're probably a fucking racist. I already know the field of play here.
You don't have to put the word probably in that sentence.
Okay, fair enough.
I wrote a book a few years ago called Ego.
I'm the one who gets the shit for this show, not you.
Not the Freudian ego, but the sort of the colloquial ego. And people, I'll get emails. People go, "Well, I haven't read your book, but here's why you're wrong." You know?
Yes.
And
This guy wrote a book.
so you're like, is there anything more egotistical than knowing that I'm wrong before you have read it? But that's what people do. We have our instantaneous reaction to things, and we go, "That's enough."
True enough. And there is an art form of Twitter snark and sarcasm where you have a pithy comment that
Hit me.
usually snide, that puts down or dismisses or demonizes some other commentator.
Sure.
And it's
So, like, to the extent that is a problem, though, people judging an article based on the headline, that's usually a result of people writing shitty headlines. Like, I've literally read a headline for an article and then read the article, and the article expressed the opposite view of the headline.
And I mean, that's
Like,
okay.
not just that the headline wasn't expressed in the article, it's that the opposite of the headline was expressed in the article.
Did the headline end with a question mark?
No,
Okay.
it was a statement.
Because that would be fine, actually. It's provocative to pose a question as your headline.
probably doesn't lead to enlightenment.
What I've always felt like the straw man, the sort of Twitter response to Better Angels was an odd one because
those people are just insufferable. The Better Angels, Braver Angels people, they're just fucking insufferable. That's my response to it. I can't tell you how many times at the fucking humanist community meetings we were doing, somebody would from the fucking Braver Angels would show up and they'd be the most annoying motherfucker I've ever listened to talk in my life. So that's pretty much the Better Angels of our nature, Braver Angels of our nature thing. My problem is that y'all are fucking annoying, actually. Fucking write that shit down and put it on Twitter.
It's a beautiful book. It's very long. But there's this sort of straw man that what you're saying is that humanity is just getting better and therefore we don't have to do anything, that progress is sort of preordained, or people will try to go, well, what about this bad thing? How does that fit into your argument? But I always felt that what your argument was in that book was that the reason things are better is that a lot of hard work and effort and changes has gone into making them better. And that while we are the heirs to that tradition, it could also stop at any moment as well.
That's exactly right. And I continue to be amazed at exactly those two responses, but both of which seem to be really elementary blunders of thinking, but that are surprisingly complex. The one is, well, how can you say things are declined? Bad stuff happens. Well, yeah, but those are totally compatible. Namely, bad stuff happens, but in the past, even more bad stuff happened.
So they're right now straw manning the the criticism of some of his work. Some of the criticism of his work is that the metrics that he's using for things like extreme poverty are like outdated metrics. That the metrics no longer apply because of the wealth gap. That's like one of the main critiques of Pinker's, like, oh, things are getting better. Well, yeah, but for who? Yeah, for like when you look at the average, sure, but what about the people at the very bottom? What's happening to the people at the very bottom of this distribution? Or even like, one fucking one level on the ladder down from the center, right? It turns out that once you get below like the sort of average or whatever, things are getting worse for those people at an alarming rate. Once you get above the average, things are getting actually better for those people at too much of a rate, I would say. And so like just because the average is going up, like by whatever metric you're using, doesn't mean that the people below the average, their quality of life or whatever, that doesn't mean that isn't going down.
Yeah, like the bell curve of wealth, it may be shifting toward the wealthier side, but it's also flattening, getting much wider.
Like, what is the average
representing that huge wealth gap?
What is the average net wealth between Jeff Bezos and a homeless person?
I believe it's in the many billions of dollars.
Right, but do you think things are getting better or worse day by day for the homeless person as that average goes up?
I'd assume they're getting worse.
I mean, that's an extreme example, but you can, and we don't, it's just the first thing that came to my head. But, if you just think about people in poverty or people that are working poor, people living paycheck to paycheck, things are getting worse for them.
Yep. And more people are living paycheck to paycheck.
But the average quality of life, when you take like when you take averages, you put everything together. Yeah, I guess it's going up because there's fucking people at the top of the fucking pile who have like 3 yachts. And one of their yachts has its own yacht that it can dock into it. Like, it's like.
And then that yacht has an even smaller yacht.
To be fair, that's a pontoon
and that's
boat.
the normal sized yacht that everyone else has.
And that yacht has a pontoon boat. Yeah, it's like that fucking Matryoshka doll of like yachts.
A decline is not the same as a disappearance. To say that X is less than Y is not the same as saying that X is 0.
Right.
So there's that strange inability to even conceptualize the concept.
But wait a minute, in his example, as Y keeps increasing and X goes down just a little bit, well, Y is increasing kind of fast and X is going down a little bit. The average of those two is still going up, but X is getting worse again. It's like fucking, he can't even come up with, like, he's strawmanning the argument. Sure, there are people with dumb responses to what he's saying, but I don't even necessarily mean dumb. I mean like non-academic responses to what he's saying, or not very well thought out responses to what he's saying. But most of those are just regular ass people who are like, excuse me, I can't afford my car payment and I work 50 hours a week. What the fucking shit are you talking about? And yeah, I guess that's a singular person replying to like somebody who's a fan of Pinker. And that's not a really well-reasoned and statistical argument, but there are people out there who have made arguments with statistics explaining why the world is getting better. It's like when Fox News is like, well, how can you be poor if you have a big screen TV? It's like, baby, flat screen TVs over 40 inches have been like the norm for fucking 20 years now, and you could get a hand-me-down or some like somebody in your family's doing pretty well and they buy you a nice Christmas gift and they buy you a brand new TV.
You could get a brand new flat screen TV that's 43 inches for I think $300 at Best Buy. So it's like, cool, $300. That's not going to pay for rent for a year.
Right.
Like that's like what, a fifth of rent, a fifth of the average rent.
Right, for
in like California.
Yeah, and that's like a 1-bedroom apartment,
and that's for 1 month.
Yeah, that's, and I don't know if he's doing that version, but the Fox News version of that is the extra 180. The Fox News version of that is an extreme version, but he doesn't. He's either not. Maybe he just blocked everybody who fucking has a reasonable argument against like what he has to say, because again, he's blocked a lot of people.
Yeah.
And anybody who's ever mentioned Epstein is probably blocked by Mr. Pinker for, one reason or another.
Progress.
And I think he is doing what you're saying, where, the quality of life, so-called, is going up in terms of like whether you have access to a refrigerator, right? But like access to a fridge won't pay the bills.
Right.
And like so many people can't pay their fucking bills.
And that, not for nothing, that fridge is included in the apartment you can't afford. So in the end,
I know this is like practically communist of me to say this. Like I might as well just grab a hammer and sickle. But if you work full time, you shouldn't be barely scraping by.
And again, about the fridge, guess if you can barely afford your rent, you can actually barely afford that fridge, because that fridge is part of the apartment you're renting.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like the stove is barely, it's part of the apartment. The indoor heating, the indoor plumbing, those are all part of the apartment you can barely afford to fucking rent. So those aren't even your things in most cases. Like you mentioned the fridge, the TV's yours, right? But the fridge ain't if you rent.
Yeah. But yeah, I am of the opinion that, if you work full time, you should be able to have a comfortable life. Meaning, not only can you pay rent, you also have disposable income to afford things like a better TV or a fridge if your fridge breaks, or like a game console so that you can play games when you get off your full-time job.
Things can get better without being perfect. And the other one that you correctly identified, which is surprisingly commonplace, is things got better. Oh, so you're saying they got better by themselves? Well, no, that doesn't follow. Things can get better not because they got better by themselves, but because people tried to make them better and occasionally succeeded. And the implication being, if we want things to get better still, we should figure out what worked in the past so we can do more of it now.
Yeah, and you obviously talk a lot specifically about violence and reduction and the sort of changes we made as a society that did that. What I thought was really interesting about the new book, Rationality, is, and I didn't quite feel that till
he finally named the book that this interview is about.
You could almost argue that this book is a prequel to Better Angels, because you're sort of making the argument that of all of the things that have produced the progress and thus the decrease in violence, rationality was the first thing, or that almost all of these movements or changes began with some sort of either rational breakthrough, a rational discovery, or a rational argument. Like, hey,
actually, isn't there like pretty substantial evidence that one of the major factors to the reduction in violence and violent crime that we've seen in the past, 60 years or something, was because we stopped using leaded gasoline?
Yeah, it's hard to substantiate something like that, right? Because you're basically arguing in favor of like a negative or whatever. But some people believe that. Some people believe that access to family planning helped a lot because, people who are from unstable households where the parents don't really want the kids aren't really going to have the best upbringing, and that probably will increase, like, across society. It'll increase the rate of violence. It could just be that it could be that, and a lot of people don't like this, could be that more people are moving to cities and learning to live with each other in a dense environment, and so, like, you're less inclined maybe to act violently when people annoy you if you encounter annoying people all the time. Because, I mean, if you live in a place where there's a ton of people, you're going to encounter great and interesting people all the time, but you're also going to encounter annoying people all the time. And so maybe your tolerance to bullshit and noise and just all of the, like, I don't know what the drivers of violent crime necessarily are, but I could imagine more and more people moving to cities is going to probably drive down violent crime and not drive it up.
Yeah, I can see that.
I don't know for sure. I'm just kind of spitballing, but who knows?
Other human, that's wrong. That really rationality is necessary but not sufficient for progress of the human species.
Yeah, and it was a surprise in writing Better Angels how often a moral movement, a movement toward greater social justice, at least temporally, originated with an argument for something that today we would think needs no argument. Like, right. We really have to argue why you shouldn't burn heretics at the stake. And the answer is people did. And then fortunately, those arguments came.
You're going back a long way, buddy.
In the sense that if no one had actually written that viral pamphlet,
I believe you have to reach back over 200 years. To find the last case of that. I mean, not the last case, but the last time that was commonplace.
And I mean, that ideology keeps rearing its ugly head. Like, we're in the midst of another satanic panic right now. So, like, I don't know if, like, I'm not buying his shit on rationality. I think there could be something also with just greater state power. Like, if you live in a city, the police are very close by. Whereas if you live in, like, a rural place, maybe the police aren't as close by. I just don't know that these things are all just solved by, like, somebody having the winning argument. In fact, that's like a very kind of privileged academic person thing to say about the march of social justice. Also, not for nothing, this guy is only for social justice that already happened. Right? If we're talking about things that would be considered social justice right now, his fucking tune changes real quick.
century, but it's not implausible given the chain of events. It doesn't mean that every improvement was conceptualized and argued for. In the Better Angels, I talked about, for example, the decline of tribal raiding and feuding and blood feuds, the decline of medieval brigandage and homicide and deaths from jousting and other conflicts.
Oh shit! You know why there's fucking less violence? Is people don't joust anymore. HK. They only do it at a Ren fair.
Yeah, there is jousting. It's just not deadly anymore.
All right, old timey Steven Pinker.
Some of which may have been a byproduct of the consolidation of kingdoms and states.
I mean, very little jousting in the past was deadly anyway.
Thought that went into it. Namely, it's a nuisance for emperors and kings if their subjects are fighting each other, just as it's a nuisance for farmers if his livestock fight each other. He doesn't care.
Well, that's fucking all right, Steven Pinker. Thanks for comparing the subjects of kings in a feudal society to the fucking livestock on a farm. All right, that's not weird or a problem or anything, dude. Fucking. There's no reason anybody would think you're a giant piece of shit, actually, Steven Pinker. My God.
Their argument is about, and it's just a dead loss for him. But the fact that it did benefit the peasants if they stopped killing each other as much, it wasn't what was in the mind of the kings and emperors, but it was
yes. The problem back then was definitely the peasants and how much they wanted to kill each other.
Right.
That was definitely the problem.
That's right. Peasant on peasant violence.
That can happen. That is that beneficial historical trend.
It certainly wasn't the social or economic inequality that led to violence.
Consequences of other motives, but many of the ones that we're proudest of, that we think of as genuine moral progress, did not just begin with people spontaneously assembling and pushing for greater justice. It did originate with someone formulating the argument.
Well, it's sort of like all cliches were probably an original quote at some point, right? Somebody came up with that.
What does it mean, probably?
And often
everything was an original quote at some point.
Fucking all words are made up, even.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Stoicism not sending their best.
Oftentimes, you can trace a certain cliche back to some person. It's always, you joke about Albert Einstein. It's always Albert Einstein or Mark Twain or someone. But
yeah, but those are a lot of those are apocryphal, you dumb fuck. Mark Twain didn't say half the shit that you fucking see a meme next to him of. Like,
you can quote Mark Twain on that.
Yeah, I saw the one. He's like, I didn't say that shit. Mark Twain. It's one of the funniest ones I ever seen, actually.
Occasionally Yogi Berra or Groucho Marx. Yes.
Yeah. But it's like somebody said it at some point, meaning like somebody had the idea. But that also makes me think, of this idea of the great man of history theory, the idea that like somebody, again, made the argument at some point, right? So
this guy's arguing for the great man of history theory right here. He's like, well, somebody made the argument. It must have been a great man.
I don't know the great man of history theory.
It's exactly what you think. It's that it's that history was driven by like a handful of great men, not by like masses of people, but by like a handful of great men.
Yeah, I completely disagree with that.
Yeah, me too.
Thomas Jefferson makes the argument.
First of all, that it was always men. Second of all, that they were always great.
Right. History. There's a lot of shitty people who made a lot of things happen in history, but they also had the help of other shitty people. Let's not get it twisted.
Well, I mean, most people are just average. So most people who had significant historical impact were just average people.
Created equal, he puts it in a document, and it does fundamentally change the direction of humanity. It's not.
Yeah, it was fucking Thomas Jefferson or whoever the fuck he said that just came up with that by himself. He's like, oh, all men are created equal. Yeah, he came up with that himself. Sure. Come on, get the fuck out of here.
Original thought, but he manages to phrase it and support the argument as such that it convinces other people to go along with it, and that's that rational, the ability to rationally do that. Maybe
also, no, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal is not rational. You're not making an argument.
Correct. You're in fact declining to make an argument.
Right. And that's fine. Like, whatever. Also, like, I wonder if he thinks that's in the Constitution, because it's not. It's in the Declaration of Independence.
State the importance of that.
That's right, and Jefferson is an excellent example because, of course, he himself was a flawed man, to put it mildly,
Yes.
and the country did not live according to his principles. That was precisely, almost to the word, what Martin Luther King in his famous speech after the March on Washington, namely, this country issued a check. It was so far it's a bad check. We're here to cash it.
Yes.
Namely, that all men are created equal thing. Remember that you promised. We're here to hold your feet to the fire.
God, they really only like 3 sentences by Martin Luther King Jr. I'm telling you.
They do. Yeah. They really don't like hearing the other stuff that he said.
Right. But it was fairly radical. A lot of it was socialist. Like it was not just this sort of like they like to say like a colorblind thing or whatever. That was like he actually didn't believe in any of that shit. His legacy, it was organizing people to put their bodies against the machine. And people don't like that legacy if they're the machine.
To force you to make good on it. So the idea outlived the original implementation. It was there to appeal to, and it did have an effect. I think, by the way, the general influence of arguments on history, not so much as great man, but I think it was who said, was it Victor Hugo? There's nothing so powerful as an idea whose time has come.
Yes.
And it isn't. I mean, in the case of Jefferson, of course, there is that statue of him in Washington, and he's on the $10 bill. No, is he on our currency?
He is. I forget.
The point is,
I haven't seen cash in so long.
I think Hamilton's on the 10.
Right.
I think Jefferson's on the 20.
Everyone knows who Thomas Jefferson is. But the thing is, it wasn't about him. It was about the idea.
Could be wrong.
There are movements where the idea, having been loosed in the kind of intellectual marketplace of ideas,
but the idea, no, dude, get the fuck out of here. These are like this is like an Enlightenment idea. This isn't like Jefferson, like the founding fathers or whatever did not come up with these ideas. They were to the extent that they were doing this, or they were attempting to codify some ideas from the Enlightenment into law in a new land. These were not. He didn't just. It didn't just come into his head. Oh, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. No, he didn't make that shit up. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. Chat has corrected me. Jackson's on the 20. Jefferson is on the 2.
I don't want to get bogged down in talking about who's on the currency.
Okay.
Remember who originally formulated the idea takes on a life of its own. And in the case of feminism, for example, I cite the first English feminist, Mary Astell, who, co-opting one of John Locke's arguments for why we shouldn't have slavery or absolute monarchy, she said, well, geez, if there's a good argument against slavery in the country, why should there be slavery in the home? If it's not good for a man to be under the arbitrary whim of a king, why is it okay for a woman to be under the arbitrary whim of her husband or father? And the idea did catch on, but we don't call it Astellism, and we don't kind of march around with posters of Mary Astell. It's kind of
hold on though, like it's not like people heard that and they went, oh, you know what? That's a really good idea. I think I'm going to go with that idea. No, it was a fucking battle.
Right. And
he is leaving out a whole lot of context here.
And I just guarantee that, like, this person didn't come up with this either. You know what I'm saying? Like, she was just probably the richest person in a given time period who had enough privilege to speak these words and have them be taken seriously by other privileged people. And that's why Steven Pinker knows who she is. I mean, whatever, if you're going to use your privilege, like, use it that way. But the idea that she was like, oh, actually, this is bad too, the way that women are treated in society. No way did she first come up with that. Absolutely not. Fuck no.
I mean, that's the thing is like it was a movement. It was the movement. It was not the idea. It was the movement that caused social change. And a movement is made of people. It's not made of ideas.
She deserves enormous credit, but what counts is not that this particular woman said it, but that it was a good idea. Someone had to have said it. She was the one.
Yeah, it's almost as if, like, in the way that obviously someone invents the hammer or the wheel, or some early man invents a tool, and then that tool.
How do you know it wasn't a woman?
People applying that tool in different contexts to solve different problems, or building on it, or tweaking on it. These ideas are almost like the building blocks of our collective progress. And someone saying, hey, you shouldn't be able to do this to white people. Hey, you shouldn't be able to do this to black people either. Hey, you actually shouldn't be able to do this to people at all, men or women. You shouldn't be able to do it to people in different countries. And we're it's like we're constantly applying or extrapolating out the, I don't know what the word is, but the telos of the tool into different contexts and getting different results out of it.
That's exactly right. The philosopher Peter Singer called it the expanding circle back in a book in the late 70s. Defending.
So wait, someone invented a hammer one time, and now women have rights? I did not follow his statement there.
I also question, okay, so if you're using a rock to break another rock, is that a hammer? Like at what, you know what I'm saying? At what point, and I mean, it's not, but at what point, how much do you have to manipulate something to call it a hammer, right? Like
does it need a handle to be a hammer?
Maybe. But it's not like somebody just came up with the hammer because they needed to break something, right? They needed a better way to break something.
Yeah. If it doesn't need a handle, then we definitely weren't even human when we invented the hammer. Because, monkeys bash things with rocks.
And of course, the next logical step is, well, why stop at Homo sapiens? Other animals are sentient too, and many of the arguments that we make against torture and slavery for other races should be extended to other species. That is, there is a kind of self-expansion.
We already have that. It's in the animal rights. Like, you're not allowed to abuse and torture animals unless, if you're Elon Musk.
That all of the lines that separate sentient beings into categories are at least morally arbitrary.
Are there any ideas like that, or expand, like if we're thinking about the moral progress we've had versus where is this energy going in the future, are there areas or ideas or things that you see, I don't want to say as promising, but just almost less judgmental? Where do you see the areas that we're expanding into, or where do you see the forward progress potentially going?
The idea behind...
Wait, before he answers that, I want to expand a little more on what he just said, where, he was talking about there's this linear progression of, you have like rights for men, rights for white men, then rights for white men and black men, then rights for white men, black men, and white women, then rights for, all black people and all white people. And then after that, you get rights for animals. But he's wrong on that, because the rights for animals thing, like, people were debating animal rights back in like the early 1900s, way before the civil rights movement.
They were probably debating, there were probably stuff about that prior too, right? I mean, there were probably, people going, why are you torturing your cow? Like, even, what I'm saying?
Like, maybe you shouldn't be allowed to torture your cow, but you can torture your slave. That's fine.
Right. And yeah, these things they're happening. He's suggesting they're happening in series. And what you're saying is that, and I tend to agree that they're happening in parallel. It's just that there's more kind of energy behind one of them at any given time in history based on what else is going on or who's holding the microphone or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty simple. It's not, I don't think that what I said is complicated or controversial. Like,
namely that we try to measure the effects of our interventions and keep the ones that actually do the most good, save the most lives.
Sure.
Is a promising idea. And it is a relatively new idea. Like, go out and measure and see if what you're doing.
What, it's a new idea to try to do what works to improve the lives of people. Get the fuck out of here.
Also, I don't agree with him at all. There's a lot of regulations that have demonstrably saved lives that we have pulled back.
Oh yeah,
because they didn't incentivize profit, or they didn't have the effect of increasing profit. And in our society, if a regulation doesn't increase profit, it is under much more constant scrutiny.
Benefits the people you want to,
and ranking it in comparison to other interventions, like that this charity has an ROI of X and this charity has an ROI of Y, and yeah.
But wait a minute, no, that's stupid too. Actually, that's that effective altruism shit. And the thing is, like, some problems are expensive to endeavor to solve, and so you're gonna expend more resources to make a lesser impact. But the problem could be so bad that that's fine.
Yep.
And taking into account things that people often forget, such as if there is a newsworthy story featuring some pathetic and highly photogenic victims. Of course, it's good to help them, but remember that the very fact that it was in the news means that lots of people are rushing to help that little girl or this particular community. And it may be that so many people have seen the news and have been motivated to hit the donate button that it's kind of...
Well, then this is so stupid. You're taking away the agency of the person collecting the money. Once the person collecting the money, if they're an ethical person, they're like, oh, got plenty of money for this. You can remove the donate button from your fucking website at any time. And instead put a fucking thing that says, we would like to thank the people who donated to this. We've been able to take care of these people, great, and then you put a fucking, you go, you know what? There's this other person actually who could use some help. Like, I
would say that only rarely happens.
Right.
It does happen.
Right. But, of course, I'm just saying that it's an ought, not is, right? Yeah, of course. Like, maybe people get greedy or whatever, but they're taking away the agency of whoever's collecting the money here now. They're almost calling it like instead of crowdfunding, they're almost calling it like mob funding, if that makes sense. Democracy versus mob rule, that kind of argument.
Aid organization may have been saturated, and you might be better off donating to some movement that does not get the same publicity on a particular day, but is saving lives 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, no one of those days of which makes it into the papers, but the dollar.
I mean, they're also not really considering, like, most people when they donate to a charity, they're going to either donate to a local charity or they're going to donate to a charity that personally that is like working on an issue that personally affects them.
Or that they care about because maybe it affects people that they can empathize with.
Yeah. So, like, if I, let's say, I'll give you a perfect example. My uncle died of a brain tumor. I have donated quite a bit to brain tumor related charities. So, it's not like I sat there and weighed, thinking about, like, well, how much good does this charity do versus this other charity? Maybe I should be putting my money in this charity. No one's actually sitting there and doing that. People donate to things that are, personal to them.
Helping, saving far more lives. So that's another new idea about beneficence and philanthropy, and another would be to try to explicitly take into account our own biases in order to work around them. The identifiable victim effect being one of them, namely, we are probably too affected by the photogenic victim in terms of which may subvert the greater goal of helping as many people as possible, but also our vulnerability to the availability bias, which is that we estimate probability by how easily examples come to mind. The news feeds the availability bias because that's kind of what it is. It's an availability machine. And it may be that solutions to big problems, including climate change, including safety and terrorism,
Okay, so climate change, safety, and terrorism, I don't think that those are things that we should be setting up a fucking GoFundMe for. Call me crazy, but I think those are the purviews of the nation state.
I would agree, yeah.
So the answer there, unfortunately, people don't like this. It's taxes, baby, taxes.
Yep.
And then you hope that you have a competent government that will allocate resources and do big things with that money or with those resources. We're not going to solve climate change by all donating to some climate group. We're just not going to.
Yeah, because you know who's not going to donate?
The people
that hoard all the fucking money.
Right.
Hidden from us because we glom too easily onto a gory image from the headlines that morning, as opposed to the underlying reality as revealed in data.
Yeah, I know it's not exactly new, and I know it's sort of a boogeyman for some people, so it kind of becomes almost fundamentally irrational, the response. But it also strikes me that some of the reckoning or conversation we're having with what they're calling critical race theory, again, I think a relatively bad name, but the idea that there are interlocking or interrelated forms of oppression or injustice, that just one's intent on a given action is not the whole story, that there could be legacies of issues or sort of different again, structural or systemic issues. So that again, the thing might have started with good intentions, but the outcome is fundamentally unjust because it doesn't address for preceding inputs. That's
okay. So first of all, this guy's like, oh, I don't like the name. I think it's a bad name, critical race theory. Dude, it's an academic concept. It's critical theory applied to race.
Yes.
Applied to race and racism in society. It is not a marketing slogan. It did not come from the show Mad Men. Madison Avenue had nothing to do with it. There's no marketing department for it. Like, it is critical theory applied to race. So tough shit.
Yeah. And the reason he doesn't like the name is because the right wing has dragged the name through the mud.
Yeah, I don't care what it's called. What little I've read up on it, it all seems like things I kind of thought I already knew or whatever, and that were expressed to me in more concise and clear ways.
Yeah, it's perfectly valid as a theory, and it explains a lot about our society. But people are calling things that aren't critical race theory on purpose. What's the one guy who tweeted out basically the quiet part, saying, cool, now that we've successfully branded everything we don't like critical race theory, they're going to struggle with this term in the future. Who was that guy?
Relatively
Chris Rufo.
Innovative or new way of thinking about injustice and progress. I'd be curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I tend to have a more critical view of critical race theory and critical theory in general. The problem with the movement is that by seeking
and what's called critical squared,
trying to root out racism, a highly loaded and emotional and condemnatory term for what might be unplanned outcomes, it can easily turn into a hunt for villains instead of an attempt to understand cause and effect. And it may also misapply.
But that's literally not what it says. It doesn't say these things were intended to be racist, or the people who implemented these things were racist. Like, CRT just explains these systems have racist outcomes.
So I would wager to you that I've spoken on air or on pre-record on the podcast to more critical scholars than either of these two have, at least like in a public way. Spoken to critical sociologists, spoken to somebody who does critical legal scholarship, and Professor Q is a critical scholar. I mean, arguably, Alex Mandela from the Q Origins Project is a critical scholar. Like, these people don't talk to anybody who's involved in critical theory, much less critical race theory at all. Because those people all criticize these people, because critical theory, you're literally being critical of like the popular ideas in your society. Like, that's what it is. So Pinker is a popular ideas guy. I don't know how that happened. Guy on the left, not so much, but falls in line with Pinker's popular ideas about society. So, and it could be argued that to some extent we do critical theory on this show is critical theory, that's like the rubric that we approach this stuff from. Neither of us are critical scholars. Neither of us have a background in critical scholarship, but it could be argued that that's like the framework that we're operating from. And so I just wish these people, well, I don't really care, but for the people who take people like Steven Pinker seriously, I wish you'd have more discussions with folks who are doing critical scholarship.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck.
They'd probably correct him on this. Like, it doesn't explain intention, whether it was intended or not. It just explains why the outcomes are that way.
Somebody in chat called it critical chicanery.
For reform to
That was actually the second thing that we were going to call this show.
ever more subtle forms of racist, because it really, by using the term racism,
Crit chic, for short,
racial discrepancy, it's a movement that basically attempts to demonize who are the bad guys. They may not realize they're bad, but
no, it literally doesn't. Like, it actually makes attempts to not demonize people.
Right. The only thing
from what I have been explained, it literally makes an attempt to not demonize any sort of individual.
And if anything's being demonized, it's like systems and the inertia those systems have. Be they legal systems, be they non-legal systems, societal systems, be they the medical field, be they the HR department at where you work, where these biases, it wasn't that long ago that like black people had to sit on a different part of the fucking bus. These things have inertia. They don't just stop as soon as the laws are taken away. Yeah, it helps, right? It's not like it's bad to outlaw things like making people sit in segregated parts of the bus, but the inertia of the system that put that into place, it's still moving. Where you don't just stop a barge. And like, that's what's going on here. And not for nothing too, Pinker is one of these race and IQ people. And so that might be one of the main reasons that he doesn't like any kind of critical theory, or especially critical race theory, because he will often say that he is engaged in the dangerous idea of racial IQ differences. And so the critical scholars, be they the Frankfurt School, be they fucking currently people engaged in critical legal scholarship, they all think he's full of shit because he believes in that race and IQ bullshit. And so of course he's going to be critical of them because they think he's full of shit. And I think that he is full of shit.
He's demonstrably full of shit.
And so, but he's not going to say that here, because that actually, after that big kind of kerfuffle, I'll call it, with Sam Harris and the fucking Charles Murray, that actually it blew up for a minute, and like it was starting to kind of gain some traction, and now I think people make fun of it so much that it is on the downturn again. Thankfully, they'll find something new though. Don't get me wrong; they'll be like culture, and they'll go back to culture, right? As soon as whatever fucking pseudoscience they have gets like made fun of, mocked, criticized, into the ground, they'll just go back to culture, which is disgusting, actually, right? You're just basically saying that another group of people is dirty or immoral or whatever because of what you've decided their race is, be they from Haiti or Africa, which are actually on the opposite sides of the planet from each other. But, oh shit, they all look black to me. Must be genetic. Like, or their culture. Never mind the history of Haiti. My God. I'd be stunned if the Haitian people didn't have some major societal problems after what fucking white people did to them over the course of history. Africa too. Jesus fucking Christ.
Whereas some of the discrepancies might be the unplanned results of social and historical forces where there isn't a bad guy now. There may have been bad guys 250 years ago or 100 years ago, but kind of doing this moral reckoning.
We can look back at the oldie times and find like examples of bad people and bad fucking organizations of people who are doing shit to fucking minority groups. But I don't know if we can find it today. I don't know. I don't see any of it here. Also, the people doing
as far as I know, racists are only from the 1800s.
Ignore those people over there doing critical scholarship because they all make fun of me. But don't worry, I had the last laugh. I blocked every one of those last motherfuckers on Twitter. And anybody who mentioned my name with Jeff Epstein's name.
The way to achieve real equality and to reduce poverty and
again, so CRT is not trying to villainize people, but there are certainly racists. There are certainly bad guys now, and Steven Pinker is just hand waving them away.
Right, and I just again and maybe we'll leave the CRT and the critical theory here. I just think these people should maybe spend a little bit of time having public conversations with critical scholars. They might be surprised at what they learn.
Or vulnerable minorities like African Americans. There's a saying that I quoted in the Better Angels of Our Nature from the great pacifist statistician Louis Fry Richardson, who responded to the cliche, to understand is to forgive. And he said, well, maybe not, but to condemn too much is to understand too little. If what you're always doing is trying to root out racists to shame, you may be oblivious to what is really happening and therefore point to the wrong causes and therefore be impotent in actually trying to improve the lives of the people that you're hoping to benefit.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing because I think it's sort of political execution has been counterproductive at best, sloppy or outright flawed.
I think it's because people who were studying CRT weren't trying to make it political.
But the idea of, to sort of go to what you're saying, that to me it strikes me as a kernel of value in the idea that there could be injustice without a bad guy, right? Like that strikes me as an insight as far as how we understand history, how we understand systems, how we understand moving, what we should try to do or build going forward. The idea that a racist is not always a bad boogeyman, but that there could be racist ideas or structures or systems in place that no one would choose, but because they are legacies of other things, we have them. That's straight.
Wait a minute. Isn't he just described like critical race theory?
Yes.
He just described it. He didn't like it when it. This guy's an idiot.
Idea of as having some value.
I think the idea, I agree, the idea absolutely has value. Although to call it racist, which is a condemnatory term, it's a vile thing to be a racist. But to identify policies, structures, laws that disadvantage African Americans as racist means that you are saying that there's a bad guy. And in practice, that's exactly what's happened. People.
All right, we got to end the pod at some point.
It doesn't. What the fuck is he talking about?
So we got to end the pod at some point. We're going to end it here. I think we are going to finish this during the post game. But like, what strikes me here is that they just said, oh, we don't like critical race theory. And the fucking dude on the left just described one of the main kind of points that's being made by the critical scholars that I've talked to and by the stuff I've read, is that these are structures and the structures have fucking inertia. That's it. So does there have, like, yeah, there are bad guys. There's these two who are sitting here shitting on the idea that they actually agree with because they don't like how it's been framed, because the people who have basically the people who espouse these ideas dunk on Steven Pinker all the time for being a fucking phrenologist.
The interviewer only said that he didn't like the name. Does he not like all of CRT, or does he just not like the name? I'm a little confused on his position, but I don't think he's trying to give his position here.
Right, and Pinker's position was clear. He was like,
Pinker's position was very clear, especially at the end there, where he says, if you call a law if you call a law racist, then someone is a bad actor. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Well, I mean, those who enacted the law were the bad actors, right?
Maybe, but what if they're all dead?
Well, then they're not around to defend themselves. It's the ultimate form of cancel culture, HK.
So, like, then who's the bad actor? Like, we're not, like... Again, even if the intention of the law was not to be racist, a law can still be racist. And in that case, it wouldn't have been passed by racists. It would have been passed by people who had good intentions and bad ideas. And they passed those ideas, and the ideas have a racist effect. Right? So even giving him the benefit of the doubt, Steven Pinker is wrong.
And if we don't give him the benefit of the doubt, like what I said is that he's mostly mad at critical theory because those people are the people who dunk on him in an academic way, not the cartoonish way that he talks about, not just posting pictures of him with Jeff Epstein until he blocks them like I did.
Yep, there's that too.
So, yeah, I don't know what to do with this. Pinker's stuff is boring, but it's also really frustrating. And I really, really get kind of frustrated with, like, I don't know, like kind of center left people who really like him, because they're just either they haven't really consumed his work in any kind of meaningful way and have only seen his TED Talks where he kind of knows the audience, or they just want to believe the things he's saying because they kind of want to be able to defend the status quo. And I'm just kind of guessing as to the reasons here, but the guy's just he's just said some wild shit, and he's wrong constantly. He keeps stepping in it and then blaming everybody else for it. And it's just amazing that this guy has reached like the rarefied atmosphere of academia. And I don't understand it.
I mean, it's the same as everyone else who labels themselves a public intellectual.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, that's been the podcast episode. Don't worry, live viewers. We're going to watch the rest of this so you can continue to bash your head against whatever you were bashing your head against for the last fucking hour and 20 minutes. HK, do you want to
switch to something new?
You want to read? Yeah, then we'll switch to something new, and then you can maybe find a new object to bash your head against.
No, I mean bash your head against something new.
Yeah, if you've maybe destroyed the thing that you were bashing your head against. HK, do you want to read the show out?
Yep. Thank you for checking us out. This has been the Intellectual Dollar Tree. We do this show every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific on twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. You can check out all our shows at echoplexmedia.com. And if you'd like to support us, you can either subscribe on Twitch or you can donate at our Patreon, patreon.com/Echoplex. Stick around for Red Light if you're listening live. This is Boomers by Periscope.